Mark Ogden, what more can you tell us about the latest situation here?
Well, United have upped their bid today to €50 million. I think it's still a little bit short of what Inter want. I think Inter are looking for like €60 million. But the latest I've had from United is that talks are progressing positively. So that's good news for United. Obviously, they haven't got a goalkeeper right now, or certainly what they would class as a number one, because David De Gea's contract expired last week. So Onana, for me, he's a goalkeeper that plays more to the Ten Hag style, plays out from the back. Ten Hag knows him from Ajax. So I think if Onana gets done, which I think it will do, that signals the end for De Gea, because I don't see De Gea coming back as a number two or as an option that is totally different to Onana. So I think Onana signals a new way forward for Man United and Ten Hag's team.
Don, you saw a lot of him at Inter. How highly do you rate him as a goalkeeper?
Okay, he's up there with the very best. When you're talking about, as Mark said there, Ten Hag style and want to play out from the back, there's not many better. I'd probably rank him alongside Ederson with the ball at his feet. He starts a lot of play off. His range of passing is very good. He's very comfortable dropping balls into front men. His range of pass, whether he's going left, right, his left foot, right foot is very, very good. And he's ultra confident. He's a very, very good goalkeeper in his own right, but with the ball at his feet, he is very special.
Looking forward to seeing him here, Shaka?
I do. Listen, I've not seen as much of him as Don has, certainly, but everything I've seen, I've been impressed with. And while Stevie is keen to point out, Stevie in particular, keen to point out that particularly in Champions League final, with the ball at his feet, he did make a couple of errors. And Stevie's right, but at no point did he recoil. At no point did he stop doing what was asked of him. And I think the side to Onana that I was most impressed with, particularly in that final, is a sense of leadership. A sense of presence that I think Manchester United have missed in that position. David De Gea has been an incredible shot stopper over the years. But the one thing, the one knock against his game, even when he was at his best, is that he was not the kind of leader that I think Manchester United needed in that position. Performance, I have no problem with. Leadership, I think there was a little bit to be wanted. I think Onana ticks both those boxes.
He's got an aura about him, hasn't he? If you're, I think that De Gea, I think the way it's been handled has been a bit of a mess all round. But I do think ultimately the right decision has been made in the end for both parties to move on. Good servant to the club, but I think time for De Gea to move on, and they're looking for something a little different, or maybe a lot different. And Onana gives him that. It's just that both physical and mental aura he gives behind. And I tell you what, Don mentioned Ederson there, and Shaka mentioned the mistakes. He knows he's going to make the odd mistake, but he's so confident in his own ability with the ball at his feet. He's going to continue to play out from the back. And we saw it time after time in the Champions League. So if you're a United defender next year and this deal goes through, you better be on your tippy toes when he's on the ball, because you might be getting it in a position that you don't expect. And that's the kind of goalkeeper he is. And yes, he's very good as a goalkeeper as well, because that is important. So I actually think this is quite an exciting signing if it goes through. I mean, I know we keep talking about the striking position, and it is hugely important. But I can't overemphasise, and I don't believe I'm saying this with a goalkeeper sat here, it is and has been and always will be such an important position, particularly now the way the game is played.
Craig touched on something there, and this is how the De Gea situation was handled. And yes, there are conflicting reports about the contract and who signed and who didn't sign and whatnot. But regardless of what you think of De Gea, regardless of what you think of his wages, I just think that it was handled so poorly for somebody who'd been at Manchester United, a club like Manchester United, for as long as David De Gea has been. And now the full story, I guess, will come out in some time as to exactly what happened. But I just feel that it has left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths around this. When we were on earlier this week, Mark was talking about United looking for cheap options. And probably the cheapest of those options would be to re-sign David De Gea. That, as much as it may be an option and maybe a cheap option, I just think in terms of how everything was handled, everything seems to have been managed, it just was not realistic. I cannot imagine United going back to David De Gea in this fashion. I can't imagine David De Gea accepting it. I can't imagine that we're having this conversation about Manchester United, who have for years done business best in English football.
When it comes to that situation, are there any updates then, Mark?
Well, no, De Gea got married at the weekend, so he's away on his honeymoon right now, so there's no rush on his part. But United are saying that they still hope to talk to De Gea face-to-face, but I think that's just a PR stunt. I think that is basically a nice PR move to say that they've still got an option with De Gea, but once they sign a goalkeeper, they'll move on. I mean, the issue is if they don't sign Onana and they have to go back to plan B, which would be De Gea, they have to keep the option open, but as soon as they get a keeper in, it doesn't make sense that they have Onana and De Gea in the squad because they're two completely different goalkeepers. So if you have Ten Hag's team playing one way with Onana, playing with a guy that plays the ball at his feet, the defence can move higher up the pitch, why would you then go to a number two who plays completely the opposite way and can't play with the ball at his feet? So I just think it's United covering the bases, and as soon as Onana gets done, then De Gea will be consigned to the past. And I think we're already getting to that stage anyway. His contract's been expired, but still, he's leaving the door open just for now. But as soon as you get a keeper in, I think the door will close. These
are the list of available players. Obviously, as you just mentioned, United need to sell in order to buy. Who from that list for you then, Craig, do you think they could realistically sell and get a good amount for?
Maguire, but I mean, let's forget the fact. Well, we can't forget. We have to remember, clubs have to be willing to pay the wages or a big portion of the wages. So I can't talk about that to an extent. But I think Maguire would get a fee. He's still an England international. I think he could still do a job for somebody, but I think it's outside the top six. I'm not sure if somebody's going to pay for Sancho, to be honest. I think there was a report that Dortmund wanted him back on loan. Man United said no. I think they want the money. You might get some from McTominay, Fred. I mean,
out of those, in all honesty, I can see Van der Beek going back to the Netherlands. I can see Jadon Sancho going back to the Bundesliga.
What price, so?
Maybe not at those prices, but I could see those. I could see somebody taking a chance on Elanga, just because he's young and has shown promise. Of the others, I'm not that certain. And I think Manchester United, with all those others, again, may find themselves in a position where they're having to subsidise their salaries and taking a cut price transfer fee along with that.
Which names stand out to you, Mark?
Well, I mean, you look at that list of players, and I mean, I think Van der Beek, to be fair, I think he's still got an injury, so I'm not sure he's fit to move. But it's like buying an expensive car and watching it depreciate over the years, and that's what United have got. They haven't got anyone there that you'd think will raise a lot of money in the market. They've, Maguire, like Craig says, Maguire, Sancho. The good players underneath somewhere, but they're earning so much money and the fees are so high that it's just going to be so difficult for United to get rid. So I think what the issue will be here, they're getting Onana done, they've got Mount done. I think they might have to get a striker in and then hope they can get rid of a lot of these players later on. Because I think many of these players will end up going the last week of the window when clubs are desperate. But right now, I don't see anybody coming in and saying, we'll take this player off your hands or that player. The one that might move is Fred. Fulham have got a long-term interest in Fred, and they might go for Fred. And McTominay will get players interested, clubs interested, because he's versatile. He can play midfield, he can play centre half. He's on for Scotland, so I think McTominay might appeal to some. But most of these players, the wages are too high, so they're going to struggle to get rid of them until right late in the window, and that is when bad deals get done and when they have to give them away, basically. So there's no ideal scenario for United here. They're not going to make money on players that they want to sell this summer. They're going to have a lot of losses there.
OK, shall we address that situation then? They are still a world-class striker short. Mm-hmm. Is this going to be the problem then?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've continually said it, you're going to have to ask, and all this waiting around for Anthony Martial and people like that, waste of time. Complete waste of time. He's what I would call, and I've played with players like this, a bit of a waster. And by that I mean players who are super talented, but either don't train hard enough, don't apply themselves hard enough, or just can't cut the mustard on the big stage. He's one of those. I'm not suggesting which one, but he's one of them for me. So then you're asking your midfielders to chip in, you're asking your wide guys to chip in, and I'm not a huge fan of the two wide guys that they've got. They've proven that they're inconsistent. Then you're asking Marcus Rashford to carry that weight again of carrying the whole front line. And you can't keep asking Casemiro to chip in with 4 or 5 goals a year, because he's got enough on his plate at the other end. And if you look at the stats for Marcus Rashford, year in, year out, there's not a lot of consistency there. There's a great year, there's a bad year, there's a kind of decent couple of years, Then it was average the previous time. So there's nothing within this graphic and within the history of Marcus Rashford, as talented as he is. It's not like we could put the stats up for Harry Kane or these strikers and it would be goals, 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 and there might be one or two of a differential. With Marcus Rashford, as you can see there, apart from 2020 and 2021, it was pretty much the same. It's peaks and troughs. A little bit of peaks and troughs. And for me, the chances of him replicating next season what he did last season, I think are slim, because that was way above what anybody expected. So then you have to look to somebody else. You can't, and that's not a criticism of Marcus Rashford. I think he's a terrific player. That is saying to Man United, do not think and do not rely on Rashford repeating that. Because that is very, very difficult for a player who historically has not been able to do it. So they have to address that. Otherwise, the top four for them is going to be a danger.
But here's the issue to that. I mean, to bring in the kind of striker that I think Manchester United, or you'd associate with a club like Manchester United and their aspirations, would have taken what seems to have been their entire transfer budget for this summer. And that's the amazing thing for me. And while, yes, there are financial fair play regulations and all that for them to consider, and Ogden can speak to that better than I certainly can, I don't feel that the transfer saga has helped Manchester United in any regard, whether they're selling or not, or to who, or which interested party. That hasn't helped that situation either. And now, again, for the second time in the same show, I'm saying I can't believe that we're having this discussion about Manchester United, who, over the years, has always been one of the best-run clubs in English football. Yet, again, you have all this hanging over them that's kind of keeping them back in so many regards.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.